I'll now reconvene the public session of the Salem-Keizer School Board meeting. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the record, all board members are here this evening, and there are no agenda modifications at this time. There are no action items on the agenda this evening. However, there are two readings, and these are the first readings on both issues. First, we'll have the Howard Street Charter School.
All right, and Mike Wolfe, our Chief Operations Officer, will start presenting related to the Howard Street Charter School request for 100% ADMW funding.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Chair Goss, Superintendent Perry, members of the board. Just a little background information for this topic. In June of 2017, the district notified Howard Street Charter School that they would need to find a new location, new space for their operations. The notification was in accordance with the terms included in the charter agreement, was based on a need for space at South Salem High School as a result of anticipated enrollment growth. Howard Street understands the need and is taking the opportunity to improve their school program by finding a location that matches their mission and vision. After an extensive search, Howard Street has found a potential location to purchase and renovate at 625 Marion Street Northeast, the former Oregon Department of Energy building downtown. The current 2017-22 charter contract with Howard Street allows Howard Street to receive 85% ADMW funding. Based on the assumption, that Howard Street would be in a district-owned building using district services such as custodial maintenance, utilities, and technology. With the move off of our campus, Howard Street would no longer require use of these district services and is requesting 100% ADMW funding, with the exception of the technology charge. That would still be part of any potential change in their funding. The 100% ADMW, as Howard Street has gone through their due diligence, is necessary to continue. As a charter school, they don't have the ability to propose a facility funding measure to a public vote, similar to our general obligation bonds. However, they are working with the Oregon Facilities Authority, OFA, to issue, OFA issues the municipal tax-exempt bonds that then would be a loan to Howard Street, where they would then purchase and renovate the new space. The timeline for the OFA bonding is very tight, which is why Howard Street is requesting the school board consider this proposal to amend their contract to 100% ADMW at this meeting, first reading, with action proposed in your November meeting on the 13th. This timeline would allow Howard Street to meet the OFA deadlines and allow them to prepare to issue bonds by February 2019. The February date is critical to meeting their construction schedule, as well as the district's construction plans for South Salem High starting in 2019. The district has already granted Howard Street a 60-day extension from the original June 2019 deadline, so through August, to stay in the facility as a way to help through the timing process. And with that, I'd like to invite both Christina Tracy, the current principal for Howard Street, and Pablo Torrent, board member, and is also the board member that's in charge of their finance committee. So I'd like to have them come up and present to you, and then the three of us will be available for any questions that you might have. So with that, Christina.
Thank you. Not used to speaking at a podium this tall, so I apologize. First of all, I just want to give you a little background about myself. I have had the opportunity to be a founding teacher of Howard Street Charter School. I began my teaching career there in 1997, and this is my 7th year as their teaching principal, which I am pleased to continue the vision of our school. Howard Street's one of the first charter schools in the state of Oregon, and it was because in 1997, the Salem-Keizer board worked with us in order to found a school that was based on a federal charter model even before there was the Oregon state law. Of course, when the Oregon law was adopted, we were grandfathered in, and when that change happened, we also had a major change of enrollment in which we went from a South Salem feeder school to a city-wide charter school, accepting applications from anyone living inside the Salem-Keizer boundary. Our new home is a part of that same journey to me. And I'm on year 22 now, so I feel like I have a little bit of a different perspective than maybe some others who have not had the stages of growth for Howard Street that I have had. We chose our new location downtown for a reason. We wanted to improve access to our school and potentially diversify our population even more. After 2 decades, we have had students from every elementary school in Salem, as well as students from private, online, and homeschool environments. But since we started as a South High feeder area, it is my belief that we continue in many ways to draw from that location just as strongly as then. It's not surprising since we're attached to South Salem High School and we do not provide transportation. But at this time, by selecting a downtown location, I believe we can potentially remove the barrier of transportation, with the city bus station being only a few blocks away. And the central location would make it easier for our families to find a way to Howard Street, with our new location potentially making access more equitable and open to students in the Salem-Keizer area. We are a true lottery. You only need to live inside the Salem-Keizer boundary area and turn in an application to be admitted into the lottery system. Answers to our applications do not influence whether you gain entrance, nor do the answers have to be in English. Still, our applicant pool is strongly reflective of our current geographic area, and I believe that when we move into a more central location, that our demographics will change as well to more broadly represent Salem as a whole. Lastly, I'd like to end with my comments with where we began, our relationship with Salem-Keizer. I want to thank Superintendent Perry, Michael Wolfe, Matt Biondi, and other members of the district for their continuing support. Charter schools were designed to allow flexibility with accountability, and I believe that's how our relationship is working. Long gone are the days in which there was this perceived tension between charter school and district, and I now see us as a partnership. We're open to partnering to offer things like in-house district servers, or providing opportunities for Salem-Keizer to have evening meetings or classroom space in our future location. Perhaps there are summer programs that would benefit both our students as well as Salem-Keizer students in the downtown area. I believe that we can work together to create creative opportunities for students that would be of benefit to both the district and Howard Street. However, I'm very certain that many people are concerned about the finances. So I want to have Pablo Torrent, who come up, who is a member of our board and part of our finances, to explain that further.
Good evening, Chair Goss, Superintendent Perry, and rest of the board. I don't have a very scripted notes to go through tonight. I just want to reiterate some of the key points related to the financials of our project. I joined the board summer of 2017, around the time that we heard the news that we needed to vacate our current location. And as a finance person that I am, my first question was maybe we could look for cheap options outside of the city, maybe heading out south or out west. And the clear direction that I heard from our principal and from the rest of the board members is no, we want to go downtown. We want to improve equity. We want to improve have equitable access to our school across all of the Salem-Keizer district. Having said that, so we were kind of centered on finding a downtown location, but we have searched elsewhere. We have searched anywhere in the vicinity, and we haven't found anything that would be comparable from a price point of view to what we have found in downtown at 625 Marion Street. So tonight I just want to give you a few messages to reinforce the request for 100% ADMW. First of all, I want to stress the fact that we have really done our due diligence for instance, in negotiating with our general contractor and with for our construction bid. We have negotiated down from an original bid of $4.1 million to currently at 2.9, and we're still negotiating to further negotiate that down to $2.2 million, which would almost signify a 50% reduction in the original construction cost. We're doing that by cutting and reducing the construction project to the bare essentials that we need for survival at our current location, at the proposed location. We're also contemplating some internal program cuts that would enable us to generate additional operational savings. We have increased enrollment to the maximum allowable number as per our contract charter. So we really worked really hard since the day that we heard from Mr. Wolfe that we needed to leave our current location in finding other potential locations. And now that we have closed in on this location at 625 Marion, we have basically engaged the services of financial advisor. We've done business case modeling for 35 years for the potential life of the bonds, the term of the bonds. We've seen that nothing other than 100% ADMW will work for us, especially in the near term. We need to cover, of course, our loan service, which we don't have today. We also need to meet the debt coverage capacity ratios that are imposed by the underwriter that will help us in negotiating the bond issuance with the Oregon Facilities Authorities. So for those reasons, we're coming tonight to ask for your consideration of the 100% ADMW funding.
Ready for questions?
Happy to answer any questions.
Director Green?
What is the actual increase in terms of dollars, Mike?
It would net to close to, when you take the increase, the 15% increase to 100, and also the not paying for utilities and to the district in a district-owned facility, it's close to about $250,000 a year. But the vast majority of that, obviously, is the ADMW. It's around 212, 213.
Other questions from board members? Director Hyan?
So 7 years ago, my son got struck by lightning, not literally, but he won the lottery for both Howard Street and J-Gems, and we had to make a choice. We went to J-Gems because it was within walking distance of our home for 1 year, and then they had to move, and they are now at the deaf school where we had to commute for a couple of years, and of course their funding got cut. So I do support the request for Howard Street because I really support our charter schools, but I hope we can readdress the funding of our other charter schools to make it equitable.
Okay. Mayor Blasi?
So I have a couple of questions. I had emailed him earlier, but so I'm just going to ask him again. So starting with kind of the overall financial health of the school, my understanding, what you've said is you need the ADMW in order to be fiscally sound moving forward. So it makes me a little nervous that you might be in kind of a tight space. I had requested to see your financials, and so I think maybe there was some disconnect today over that. But I would like to see the financials, kind of what the bottom line is. How close are you going to be? Because if we're funding at 100%, we're basically, we're providing that support. And so I want to make sure that for the students and the families that, we're not potentially putting you at risk or them at risk if we're so close. So being fiscally responsible with not just the building funds, and I do appreciate that you've brought the cost down, But if the cost is still 2.5 million, where is that putting you over the next 30 years operationally? And I know you submit, every time we review your charter, you submit a budget and a plan, but this is a big change, so I'd like to see where that plays into your financial, and where are you currently financially? So, I don't know if that was a question or a request or a slight concern, but I just want to make sure that we're helping you be fiscally stable so that there's not an upset at some point.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So the 100% ADMW funding would allow us it would place us in a position where we would have about 120% of operating revenues over operating expenses. So that is a request, that is a ratio that is set, also recommended by the underwriter and by our financial advisor, so that we have excess funding, operating funding, to cover for other capital expenditures or for contingencies. So, yeah.
Paula, so to clarify, is that just for 1 year? Is that for each year? Is that planned out for the next 20 years, or?
So if we only met it for the first year or 2 years and we don't look out at 5, 10, or even we have looked out 35 years, they wouldn't give us the funding, they wouldn't give us the bond. So we need to make sure that we show in our performance statements that we always meet that debt capacity ratio.
Okay. Do you have something that you can share with us that demonstrates that plan and kind of what your current fiscal, like your this year's operating budget and?
We certainly do, and we have some projections.
I think that would just give us a little more insurance. And then I do have one more question.
Before you ask
Yeah.
that, let me also say, we receive their annual financial audit every year, and we can certainly make that available. And we have conversations about maintaining a 5% ending fund balance, similar to the board's 5 to 7% target. So that's always been part of the operating budget.
Yeah, as long as it's not a negative number. And the other question I have, and I do appreciate your comments regarding equitable enrollment. I know when I met some of you a couple years ago, that was a question I had for you, and it's come up again. I appreciate the focus on that, but the question I had a couple years ago for you, and that I still have, is you operate a lottery system, but it's based on students applying and families applying. And so what I had asked a couple years ago was, how do you reach out to other students and other families? So, 'cause I don't know how aware all of our families are of this amazing opportunity that they're eligible for, unless we let them know.
Yes, so what we have done in the past is sending out invitations really to each of the elementary schools. So notice when it comes up in January every year, in addition to having a February parent info night and a tour in February as well, way before the actual application deadline in March. And we do have some of those tours that are available in Spanish. We do not have too many other languages, although we have had translators for hard of hearing and deaf students as well. And we have reached out really through our elementary system. Even though that has been our process and a newspaper ad and our website and things like that, we take in 60 students this particular year, and we had 200 applications for those 60 spots. So again, it is a lottery. You never know what you're going to get. But we do make an effort to reach all of our schools rather than showing up at just one PTA or anything like that. We make sure that we're doing that for all of our elementaries.
Other board questions?
Yeah, I had a question for Mike. Mike, do you know what percentage we're funding the other charter schools?
85.
85? They're all
Yeah.
85?
We moved each charter to 85 to create that sort of baseline in the district, I think a couple years ago, maybe last year, a couple years
I
ago.
think I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Director Green?
So I'm looking at the charter school agreement we currently have with Howard Street Charter School. I'm looking at Exhibit C, which is the contracted services. And I'm assuming there are other services we provide to Howard Street Charter School beyond this?
you want to?
Yes, no?
I assume that's the one that has the utilities and the custodial
Right, it's got
and all of that.
maintenance,
Yeah.
utilities, technology
Uh-huh.
services, custodial. I mean,
Sure.
I'm assuming there are other services that the district provides to Howard Street Charter School. Don't we do some special education services?
We do. We have special education services, a half-time position and a half-time IA, yes.
And what about record keeping, data warehouse? Are all those part of Salem-Keizer's costs as well?
We pay a technology access fee that includes the office computers, it's 3. And we do all of the record, we have all of the hard copied records and everything, but yes, there is some. However, email and things like that are all done through Howard Street through a separate account.
And then are all employee costs paid by Howard Street?
No, there are 2 employees, myself, my office manager, and 1 teacher that are district employees. The others are all direct hires of Howard Street.
So those costs aren't reflected in the contract then?
Correct.
So there are additional costs that Salem-Keizer assumes with regard to the operation of Howard Street, even funding it at 85% that's not in the contract. Yeah, we just made a move to take Howard Street down to 85, to put them in line with our other charter schools. I don't support this move to 100%. I understand you got a facility need, but every other charter school in the state has that facility need. And you're asking us essentially to finance your loan for you. And we have turned down other schools, private schools in this district, that have essentially asked us the same thing. I have a real concern about this, and I'm not going to be able to support this.
Other questions? Director Kyllo?
My question is, you're asking that this change become permanent to the contract, not just for this contract, but permanent forever and ever and ever, onward, always, forever.
Or at least the 35 years of the bond, yes.
Okay?
One more, sorry. So, Mike, can you clarify for us then, because I appreciate what Ms. just said, but can you clarify for us the offset? So they're asking for 100% because they're not going to be utilizing district space. But our other schools, not all of them, at least 2 others, are using district space and they only receive 85%. But we also have a school that is not using district space but also only receives 85%, which is to Marty's point about if we do this, then it needs to be even for the other school.
Yes, JGEMS, excuse me, the other middle school charter is at an ODE facility for the deaf and the hard of hearing, right? And they're actually paying approximately $60,000 a year in rent. So that's a consideration in the future, I think, as Director Hyen had said, for the board. But the other 2 elementary charters are in district facilities at 85%. And they are receiving all of the services that you see, the maintenance fee, the utilities fee, and all of the overhead that goes along with payroll and, all of the overhead of a district supporting a school is built into the 15% as well.
Further questions, comments? Okay, there will be time for public comments as we move on, but not at this point. We'll cover the other reading first.
Okay.
On the real estate move, Superintendent?
All right, our next reading tonight is on Resolution 201819-3, Resolution of Necessity to Acquire Real Property. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our legal counsel, Kevin Shuba.
Board Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Perry, Kevin Shuba, attorney for Salem-Keizer School District. I'm here to summarize item 5B that's on the agenda. McNary High School is in need of additional capacity, projecting enrollment of 2,200 students. It was part of the 2018 bond measure for proposed improvements to achieve the goals of additional capacity, improved traffic safety, improved traffic flow, requires the acquisition of additional land as the property at McNary is fully developed. Surrounding McNary, the options for contiguous property to acquire are relatively limited. Many of the surrounding parcels are residential homes. However, one option has been identified as vacant land owned by St. Edward Catholic Church directly to the east of the campus boundaries. With agreement with the church, district staff and consultants have analyzed the church's vacant land to determine whether it would be appropriate for the district's uses should it choose to acquire it. That analysis has resulted in a recommendation to acquire a portion of the church's property directly east of McNary High School. As reflected in the draft resolution and the background and discussion page that precedes it, to achieve the goals recited in those documents with the least amount of disruption to the surrounding neighborhood, staff recommends acquiring 6.8 acres of the church's land. Importantly, on the 6.18 acres, there are no existing structures or improvements or even pavement. And as recommended by staff, it is planned in a way that will achieve the greatest public good with the least private injury. In preliminary discussions with the church has indicated it's not inclined to enter into an agreement to sell the acreage. However, we believe that there's still opportunities to maybe find common ground. If we cannot arrive at a mutually agreeable arrangement, the power of eminent domain that is granted to the district by state law permits the district to acquire this property with a payment of just compensation as determined in a court. The draft resolution that's before you is the first step for the board to consider using its powers to acquire the property. It by no means ends the negotiations with the owner. In fact, state law requires another round of negotiations with a disclosure of an appraisal to ensure a fully informed and complete conversation with the owner regarding potential sale. However, the resolution of necessity is a predicate for commencement of those eminent domain powers. The resolution and consideration of it will also, the adoption of it will also position the district to timely apply for permits necessary to construct the improvements recommended by staff before the commencement of the next school year in August of 2019. Therefore, the staff recommends that the board adopt the resolution of necessity. This is, of course, the first reading, but recommends the adoption of the resolution of necessity for the reasons stated both in the board plate as well as what I've presented here. We have the diagram of the McNary High School as well as the areas east that shows the improvements that will be made to the building, as well as some of the additional improvements that would be made on the acquired land. And I'm going to turn it over in just a moment to Mike, but I would leave you with the construction that is anticipated will displace certain improvements on the property, which will require additional property to construct those improvements, as well as to construct additional driveways in and out of the campus. Mike?
Okay, great. Thanks, Kevin. I'm going to try and stay close to this mic, but I want to go ahead and sort of orient it to the current campus. All right, this is the future schematic, but the current campus has the tennis courts located right in here in the back of the building. And to orient you to the map, this is north, south, east, and west. So when Kevin said St. Edward's is to the east, it's up in this area on the map, okay? So as you can see, this is an actual two-story wing. This is obviously the elevation looking at top down, right, flyover. So the current tennis courts are here, so they get displaced. There's also parking along this area here that gets displaced. This is the new front entrance, and if you're familiar with McNary, there's parking all through here. That gets displaced as well. And the existing softball and soccer field is located here. In the schematic, we relocate the softball, girls softball and soccer field here. We also reconfigure the entire front entrance. So your entry and exit is now deconflicted, so you have clear path for pedestrians and bicyclists. You also have clear path for parking. And what we've done is created a flow for our our small buses with our students with special needs. So they'll come in this way, offload, and then egress out to a signalized intersection here. This is Claggett Street. And so this design is integral into the safe flow of traffic, which deconflicts vehicular and pedestrian traffic, and also creates a space for our students with special needs, because remember, part of the bond at the high school includes building additional special education rooms, and they'll be in this area. So this is tied into that as well. What you'll see is the configuration in allows for drop-off, complete separation from parking, right? Drop-off, and then this is an area that's only pedestrian. The entrance now is a true entrance where you're not mixing vehicular and pedestrian traffic to include bus onloading and offloading as well. So it also creates additional parking to replace the parking that was displaced in this area and in this area. And we know this is an area here that causes quite a concern in the community as far as students parking off-site in the neighborhoods and parents dropping students off-site so that they can enter the campus in this vicinity here. We believe that with the additional parking, the need to do that would be eliminated because you'll have plenty of parking on campus. So that's part of the safety piece. And also, when we looked at the displacement of the tennis courts and also the softball fields, as you see around the campus, it's completely residential. And so that's where, as Kevin said, we looked at the only vacant area around the campus, and that is the St. Edward's property. So any questions about the design?
Director Hagan?
So if we were not to get the St. Edward's property, what would be our alternate plan?
Since we need additional acreage, and we've determined the plan to require the 6.18 acres, we would have to look for 6.18 acres or a very similar number elsewhere. And we wouldn't be able to create this safe flow of traffic off campus, so it would be a complete redesign, and I'm not sure that we'd be able to meet the safety needs as defined by the community and the design team. And we would have to look around the perimeter for that acreage.
And what happens if we do not do anything with McNary?
We don't meet the goals that were stated to our community when we asked them to support the bond, is essentially the most simple answer that I can come up with.
Okay, thank you.
Director Green?
So Mike, let me ask you a question about the new entryway you identified, the blue on the south end? No, to the school. Sorry, entrance to the school, the C area. Because if I remember correctly, out at McNary, they requested a new entryway for safety issues because it's a pretty old entryway. Threat assessment that was done, I'm assuming John Van Drill looked at it. We need a vestibule, we need 2 locking doors, we need to have direct sight from the office to the front doors for safety, and we don't currently have that. Is that right at McNary, or is it a system that We just need to address that safety issue with our entrance. Yeah.
All of that and more. Actually, we're reconfiguring the front office to locate it up in this area. So currently, as you walk into McNary, you walk in and you can go left, you can go right, but you don't have to go to the office, and you're in the facility. And so it's part of the safety enhancement that's been designed in to actually create an entrance, as Jim said, that gives you the separation from walking directly into the building where you have to go through a vestibule, a safety. Basically, it's a 2 double door system. And it also creates a more contiguous area here for performing arts, so which is what draws a lot of people in outside of athletics. So you can actually enter into the performing arts without getting into the main school in the design, which helps.
I guess my point is to make the one that you made, Mike, is when we went out and talked to our feeder systems, McNary indicated that's what they needed, the McNary community. When we went out for the bond, that's what we said we'd do in the McNary facility for our community.
That's correct.
Okay.
Other board comments?
Just to clarify, so Marty asked the question about what are other options? We would have to look around the school. What is around the school? I think you said earlier that there's no vacant property, so what is around the school?
Again, as Kevin said, part of the process is to minimize disruption. And so that's what kind of guided us towards the conversations with St. Edwards. However, it is an option for a board to consider finding the acreage needed to support the site plan in residential neighborhoods, which would enter into the federal relocation program and be extremely costly, but is an option for the board to consider.
And if I may chime in, you can see from the satellite photo that there are residences that surround the campus. It is, I mean, McNary was built at a time when Keizer was a different place, and there's a lot of infill, and you're surrounded on all sides except for the parcel that has been identified.
Other board comments?
Thank you.
Not seeing any more board comments, we'll proceed into the public comment. Oh, no one has signed up? All right, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak that has not signed up? Appears there are none. I think we're adjourned.
That's it. All right.
We're adjourned for the evening. And thank you all for coming. You are appreciated.